Lord of the Rings: The Rings of Power is back for Season 2 and boy am I excited. Here is my attempt to save you hours of your life from watching the whole of Season 1 by offering you a recap on the entirety of its content. I hope that you enjoy this, and if you do, make sure to give me a thumbs up to let me know. And obviously, this video will contain spoilers for Season 1. This is the prequel to Lord of the Rings, set roughly around 3,000 years beforehand. Plot is based on the forging of the rings by influence of Sauron, the evil lieutenant to the Dark Lord Morgoth. In this series, we have two mystery characters, the Stranger and Halbrand, whose identities are unknown. Season 1 begins with a voiceover from Galadriel, who tells us that she remembers the times before it all went bad. And she goes on to discuss darkness and light, yada yada. She's retelling the story of thousands of years ago when Morgoth attacked the elves, and so they prepared to fight him. We get a flashback of her brother on a boat offering her some deep quotes. The elves manage to defeat Morgoth, but then whoopsie, Galadriel's brother dies. This explains Jee's motive to kill Sauron. That elf wants revenge. She tracks him to a fortress and finds his logo, which we later find out is actually a map of the Southlands. Galadriel goes back to the elf city of Lindon, where we meet Elrond, another elf. Galadriel is told that she must return to the Undying Lands to retire, but she really doesn't want to. So she jumps off a boat. She's rescued by a character called Halbrand on a raft. They don't get along at first, but they are both picked up by a bigger ship and taken to a place called Numenor. At the start of the season, we also meet the Harfoots, who are a type of hobbit ancestor. Our main character here is Nori Brandyfoot. This is where we meet the Stranger, whose identity is unknown. He crashes on in a meteor like a boss. We don't know who he is, but he's basically a naked man with magical powers that he cannot control. Nori befriends him, tries to teach him how to talk, and it's a very cute partnership. We also have the elven warrior Arondir. He has been sent to keep an eye on the inhabitants of the Southlands. This is where we meet the human Bronwyn, who gets her flirt on with Arondir. I ship it. Does anybody still use that phrase? And we now have the couple Obrondir. Early on in the season, we also meet the Kingdom of the Dwarves, as the great elven smith Celebrimbor sends Elrond over to the dwarves to ask for their assistance in smithing something really cool. I don't know the technical terms, I'm not a smith. Prince Durin and Elrond used to be really good friends, but they haven't seen each other in a while, so they got a lot of catching up to do. The first two episodes of Season 1 mainly focus on world building rather than plot progression, but my gosh, is this a beautiful looking series. In episode 3, Arondir is captured by orcs and ends up in a camp full of workers. He'd discovered that a village had been destroyed and that the orcs are doing some shady stuff. It looks as though they're constructing Mordor, ready for Sauron's return. Arondir and his elf mates do attempt to escape the orc camp, but it ends in tragedy. We also learn that Galadriel is in some pretty great danger. Turns out the people of Numenor hate elves. She's an elf in Numenor. That is the worst place to be. Halbrand and Galadriel do stay in the place for a little while, however they get into a bit of trouble by the Queen Regent. The Queen is very anti-elf. At this point, we still don't really know where Halbrand comes from. Galadriel thinks that he is an heir to the throne of the Southlands because she has now discovered that his logo is a map of the Southlands and he has it on a pouch with a royal symbol on it. He tells her that he is an heir, but he doesn't want it. We also get some really cool Easter eggs to Lord of the Rings here, as we have Isildur and some other characters that pop up throughout as well. In episode 4, Arondir manages to escape the orc camp that he's been captured in. However, he is then brought to a big warrior called Adar. We see Adar and Arondir having a little chat, giving some backstory. Turns out he's a corrupted elf in service of Sauron. Meanwhile, going back to the humans, the locals are starting to run low on supplies, so Bronwyn's son Theo volunteers to stock up and go a search for some resources. However, he is attacked by orcs, these pesky orcs. Thankfully, Arondir has been released by this point and jumps in at the rescue. Then Bronwyn appears and there's a really cool fight, and they do manage to escape. During this time, Theo discovers a really cool sword. It's an important blade here which clearly has some significance. We do later find out that the sword hilt is actually a key. I wonder what the key could open. Keep watching this video to find out. Bronwyn tries to encourage her locals to fight Adar, but there is a lot of conflict and resistance. Galadriel is still on her quest to help the Southlanders. The Queen is still putting up a lot of resistance there. At this point in the season, we also get a glimpse into Mithril, which is a very prized metal. Durin is keeping that ore a secret, because they suspect that that is the real reason that Elrond has conveniently arrived at the dwarves. In episode 5, we get to see the Harfoots and the Stranger again, who I'm pretty sure were completely absent from episode 4. I don't think they had a single scene. The Harfoots are migrating, however Nori's dad breaks his ankle and is left behind. The Stranger offers to help out, but he does struggle to control his magic and there is some injury. We watch the Stranger drag caravans from the swamp, fight off some beasts. So it turns out that he's a goodie rather than a baddie, although his identity is still unknown. We We see some weird folk in white gowns who seem to be some sort of a cult, and they are tracking the stranger. Meanwhile, Bronwyn and Arondir are preparing to fight the Orcs' army, and Theo ends up showing his mum and Arondir the cool blade that he found earlier. Galadriel is also preparing for battle back in Numenor. Halbrand offers to help her on her quest. The Queen asks Galadriel to leave because she fears that it's going to put Numenor into danger, but then she gets some kind of sign from a tree, I'm pretty sure, that tells her she's on the wrong path, and she therefore asks Galadriel to stay and offers to help her out. So the Queen is now on board with helping them sail off to war. Elrond discovers that the real reason he was sent to the dwarves was to get more mithril, because apparently that is going to save the elves from their ultimate doom as their immortality is fading. Not so immortal anymore, and Durin confesses that he has found mithril. We start off episode 6 with Adar's Orc army charging into the watchtower where Arondir is waiting. Arondir ends up defeating them, but not without kissing Bronwyn first. Hashtag Abrondir. And there's a very cool fight scene. But then Bronwyn gets hit with an arrow, and there's some speculation that at some point a main character could die. But they don't. Then Adar randomly goes about killing folk in search for the sword that Theo has. Theo does eventually give up the sword. There is also a trap where the first stage of orcs that were sent in to attack the village are actually not orcs. And as the battle gets worse, luckily our good old pal G marches on in with her army from Numenor. Adar tries to escape with the sword, but Halbrand steps in, manages to stop him, trips him up on his horse. Galadriel interrogates Adar, where we discover that he is not Sauron. Sauron's identity is still unknown at this point. Galadriel starts to display some cruelty and some evil here, and the peasants of the Southland are hailing King Halbrand because he is the heir to the throne there. However, this episode is very cool because Mordor is created before our very eyes as the volcano erupts. A random bartender has taken the sword hilt and has used it as the key. It destroys the Southlands and it creates Mordor in its place. How cool is that? The world is covered in dust, fire, ash. The volcano erupts around Galadriel and she is devastated as she has failed to stop Adar on his mission. Isildur gets trapped in the flames, but we do know that this is just a trick. We know he stays alive because this is a prequel. The Queen ends up being blinded. Galadriel immediately manages to find Theo and offers him some comfort. There are a lot of deaths here. The people of Numenor return to their ships, but many are injured, obviously their queen. There's some speculation in this episode that Galadriel's husband is actually still alive because she says that she never saw him again, not that he was dead. And as they say in TV shows, if you haven't seen a dead body, they're not actually dead. Now the Harfoot storyline starts to get intertwined with everything else that's going on. They've been very separate at this point. Sadok realises that the falling fire rocks are signs of evil happening in the east. The stranger struggles to control his power, but he does set off in search of the 3 people from the cult who were tracking him. We now found out that their names are the Dweller, the Ascetic and the Nomad. Meanwhile, King Durin rejects Elrond's plea for mithril to save the elves. What a nasty man. Prince Durin does offer to help, but obviously his king is not aware of that. Durin and Elrond go to mine the mithril themselves. But the king catches them and banishes Elrond. Shoo! However, we realise that the king actually was right in rejecting Elrond's plea to save the elves, because there's a creature down there in the mines that can be awoken, which now has been. More about that in season 2. This episode is cool because there's a showdown between the king and the prince, and we get the big reveal of the Balrog lying beneath the mountain. And now we're on to episode 8, the season finale. We get a red herring that the stranger is Sauron because the people in the cult think that that is who he is and start worshipping him. But he doesn't know who he is. Am I Sauron? I don't know. Or am I Gandalf? However, after a motivational speech from Nori, he decides that he can choose who he wants to be, and he chooses to be good. You can be whoever you want to be. Although I'm pretty sure if I wanted to be Sauron, I don't think I could do it justice. Nori does not follow the Harfoots in their migration and decides that she is going to go off on her own adventures with the stranger. Looking forward to seeing more of that in season 2. Meanwhile, in Numenor, the Queen's father has died, which obviously means that the council are going to start scheming. Very similar storyline to House of the Dragon. The death of a king always means that the council are going to scheme. Happens every time without fail. We see Galadriel go back to Lindon and reunited with Elrond again. Whilst she's there, she looks into the archives and realises, wow, there is no heir to the Southlands. Halbrand has been lying this entire time. Halbrand finds the mithril and suggests to Celebrimbor to mix it with lots of other metals and spread it out a bit. Galadriel clocks onto this plan because Adar told her that that is what Sauron was planning to do. So this, alongside the revelation that there is no king of the Southlands, who is Halbrand? And then, biggest plot twist, I definitely didn't expect this. Halbrand is Sauron, the absolute hunk that is Halbrand. I am mad and disappointed. I thought that was a pretty good plot twist. I was expecting anybody to be Sauron. Pretty early on in the season, I actually thought it was a horse. Halbrand slash Sauron tells Galadriel that his plan is to make 2 crowns so that they can serve alongside each other. Him and her ruling the world. However, she rejects him, he disappears, and Galadriel tells nobody about the revelation. However, she has the idea to create 3 rings. The Rings of Power! Elrond also discovers that Halbrand is Sauron, but again, he decides to tell nobody either. So Halbrand Sauron is off to Mordor to take back control from Adar and forge the One Ring. The One Ring to rule them all. The elves, meanwhile, have forged their 3 rings of power. Whew, chills. And that, ladies and gentlemen and all in between, is the entire season recap of season 1 of Rings of Power. I hope that was helpful for you. Quick and concise, those are my goals. Amidst the controversy, I actually really enjoyed season 1 of Rings of Power. If I missed anything out or if you have any feedback on the video, please make sure to let me know in the comments below. I'd also love to keep the conversation going by knowing what you are the most excited for season 2. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up to let me know that you did. And if you like my content and you want to see more from me, then please subscribe because it's free and it means that you can see my videos easier. And stay tuned because I will be reviewing each episode of the Rings of Power every single week, just like I did with House of the Dragon. I'm so excited for this. So thank you very much for watching this video. I will see you next time, or rather you'll see me, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye for now!